Welcome back to NewsHour. Thank you for staying with us. We now want to evaluate the state of humanitarian affairs in the Democratic Republic of Congo. There have been a couple of developments stemming from the clamor to ensure that peace returns to the volatile eastern DRC. We have seen Qatar-led talks. Equally, just recently, the EAC and the SADC actually met and decided to put up a joint team to ensure that these former presidents who will be leading at the forefront will ensure that peace returns to the volatile Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. But we want to take a look at the humanitarian concerns that are arising from Eastern DRC. Joining us virtually from the volatile region is Emmanuel Lampert, who is the MSF representative at the Democratic Republic of Congo, or better yet, Doctors Without Borders. Emmanuel, thank you so much for your time and your time right here on NewsHour. We just want to start with the very latest, because MSF released a report on the spike of atrocities in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Let's start with a general breakdown of the humanitarian situation at hand. Just map out the human toll of the conflict, which seems to be persistent despite the talks to bring peace in the volatile region.
Good evening. Indeed, Doctors Without Borders yesterday launched officially a report with a focus on Ituri province. This is the northern eastern province in the DRC. The report is entitled "Risking Its Life in Order to Survive, Ituri Field of Violence and Displacement." And so through medical data collected in 23 and 24 and loads of testimonies from beneficiaries, from patients, from communities, we have tried to shed light on the impact of violence on the population. But also, and this is very important, numerous incidents, lack of respect for medical facilities.
Okay, Emmanuel, thanks for that breakdown, because the report is quite important. As you've mentioned, you're taking into account some of the testimonies from those affected residents. Has there been any progress in terms of peace after the Qatar talks? Recently, we equally saw the heads of the East African Community and the South African Development Bloc, SADC, actually front a couple of leaders to lead in the negotiations. Has there been any decline in exchange of fire between the warring parties after these talks?
So these talks may be a window of opportunity in order for peace to be brought to the wider region, which is more than Ituri, where the report that was brought out yesterday was focusing and is focusing on. Overall, in North and South Kivu, it is calmish, but there are several areas where the front lines and all parties to the conflict are a couple of hundred meters one from another. And in Ituri, again, where the report that we have launched yesterday is focusing, in Ituri and notably in the Jugu territory, there is still ongoing violence with quite an impressive and important human toll in terms of dead bodies, in terms of wounded. So the report shedding light based on medical data from the past, this is actually also shedding light on what is happening today on ground and what we see in terms of admissions, wounded being brought in, notably in our referral medical surgical facility in Bunia, which is the fief of the chiefdom of Ituri province, with an important proportion of beneficiaries having also psychological trauma, and this goes up to way beyond 60%. So this is very important to highlight, There is a physical, human toll, but it also comes with huge psychological impact, the violence and the eternal displacement.
That's noted, Emmanuel. Let's talk about the challenges to access in healthcare. And are health institutions falling prey to attacks as well? What's the situation in Ituri?
Yeah, so this is, as a matter of fact, the second focus of this report, the impact of violence on the civil population, the impact of violence and the lack of respect for the medical humanitarian mission, which is translated into attacks on health facilities. Not later than early last year, the Drodro General Hospital was attacked, and staff and patients needed to flee. This is, of course, intolerable, unacceptable, and one of the key asks of this report that was launched yesterday is not only, of course, to give visibility and give voice to the voiceless, but also to call upon all parties to the conflict to respect the medical mission and broadly to reinforce international humanitarian law.
Emmanuel, what are the needs on the ground right now, especially in Ituri? Let's evaluate the people's needs vis-a-vis the limited resources available. Is aid being affected, and how exactly is MSF navigating through these challenges?
Well, the response is not up to the needs that are present for years now. One remarkable and important given is that the number of internal displaced people at the start of this year and over this first quarter of 2025 has risen again with 7%, so totalizing over 1.4 million internal displaced people. And so the needs and the operational capacity that is present, given the access barriers, given insecurity, is very complicated, and it is not a given. So the response is not up to the needs. For instance, food security is not being granted. Minimum standards in the IDP camps is not up to international standards. And some of the data that we have been putting forward, like 140 wounded being taken care of since the start of our activities in the referral hospital in Bunia, that's a tiny proportion of the total amount of wounded that have been able to be transferred to Bunia. So there are important gaps, and so another call of this report is upon donors, humanitarian donors, health donors, but also on the government to raise the level of response.
Emmanuel, I have to ask, what exactly is the plight of the most vulnerable groups? According to that report, what's the plight of the women, children, especially in Ituri, who have been affected in one way or the other by the ongoing conflict?
Well, a story is, and this we have seen again over the past months, a 9-year-old child being admitted, wounded at the abdomen with clearly with machete, attacked, and who then shared the story of his brothers being killed in front of his eyes. And this is just one story. So this is an example of the physical trauma, very impressive for our field collaborators, for the medical staff, but also of the psychological trauma, which will be almost impossible to recover over the span of a life. And same stories and same atrocities are also being brought forward when taking care of survivors of sexual violence. And as mentioned, there is of course also a need to actively listen and try to respond to our utmost best to the needs of people who have been now for years in these IDP camps and who need to risk their lives, for example, trespassing a river where they might get slaughtered, but they need to in order to get firewood, in order to be able to cook the minimum for the children. So these stories and these examples give a bit an idea of what the common population in Ituri, in some of these places like Jugu territory, Mahagi territory, but even close to the fiefdom in Bunia, are living.
Give us a picture of the state of affairs in some of these displacement camps, because at times of war, the limited supply of resources is usually a core issue. Talk to us about food insecurity, the state of hygiene conditions and the shelters in some of these camps that have been put up to at least alleviate the suffering of the residents of Ituri and the neighboring towns. Yeah.
You pointed rightfully out the precarious situations and the key areas in which at least there needs to be a reinforcement and the minimum should be assured for the internal displaced people. In some of the sites, notably an emblematic or a more known site, which is the Row camp, minimum standards in terms of water closets, in terms of water supply, is not being assured. And so linking that with food security and food ratios not coming in, sometimes for security access reasons, then clearly also housing shelters not up to minimum standards. Combine all of that, and you have an idea how people are living in very below minimum standard conditions, which again is intolerable, unacceptable, and it cannot be neglected and forgotten.
Okay, Manuel, as we finalize, what's the clarion call to government, non-government actors and humanitarian actors that are active in the volatile regions in northeastern DRC?
Again, if we bring it back to the title of the report that we launched yesterday, Risking Their Lives in Order to Survive, putting forward violence on civil population and violence on medical essential structures, then there are two main calls. First of all, as we said, calling upon the government, the humanitarian community, actors, donors, to reinforce and bring up to the minimum standard the response for the IDPs, assure prevention and protection. Call is to all parties of the conflict to respect the medical mission, medical facilities, medical staff, patients, but also the means that assure continuity from one structure to another, and by that reinforcing the principles of international humanitarian law.
Okay, stay safe. Emmanuel Lampert, who's joining us from DRC. He's the MSF representative in the country, the Doctors Without Borders, just giving us a status update of the humanitarian situation at hand, bearing in mind there have been a couple of developments in the Democratic Republic of Congo. just to note the Qatar peace talks, but there doesn't seem to be a de-escalation of violence in eastern DRC. We've equally seen the East Africa Community and the SADC regional bloc come together. There was a joint meeting chaired by President William Ruto just yesterday as they tried to take a look at the steps that are needed to be taken in order to bring peace in the volatile region. Of course, we'll keep you updated on the very latest on that particular note, even as we bring you up to speed with what is the latest back here at home. Thank you so much, Emmanuel Lampert. And let's recap what we had asked you tonight on the big question. The question stemming from the cabinet reshuffle as the former CS for Public Service, Justin Muturi, was axed from the cabinet. We asked you tonight, is President William Ruto justified in firing the former CS Justin Muturi? Is the president justified in firing the former CS Justin Muturi? I'm just looking at some of the comments you've shared on our toll-free number 22151. Let me take a couple of them. The president should stop these premature reshuffles. Why appoint an incompetent person, then sack them? A key question right there. Someone named Juma says, Ruto sacking CS Muturi is no shocker. Kenyans saw it coming. At least now there will be one house set to destroy Kenya. I don't get what he meant by that particular point, but that's the latest we've gotten from you. Perhaps one more. Wellington Churchill says, for Ruto to claim that a CS is incompetent is laughable. This only proves his incompetency to govern. Let's pray for him, just as Uhuru Kenyatta said recently. And that's how we wrap up tonight's edition of a News Hour. Thank you so much for interacting with us. Keep the conversation ongoing on our social media platform at KTN News KE. My name is Jesse Rogers. On behalf of the entire team, including our sign language interpreter, Meresha Owiti, we say good evening and good night. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.